The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. If you have been watching our little, I guess there were little tweets and little clues over the weekend, then you know that Friday was a really big day around here. On Friday we had a very special guest and we're going to debut this new interview with her. Coming up in just 20 minutes. So very excited about that. On Friday, we posted a Mayan temple for you to look at and said, this is a clue as to who's going to be on the show. And then we were supposed to have a picture of a cow on Saturday, but I couldn't figure out how to use InstaSize. I'm still remedial. But in any case, if that doesn't put it together for you, then let me tell you that the big surprise, and we revealed it yesterday, is that on Friday we were able to have a wonderful interview with Temple Grandin. We talked with her about teens, anxiety, and unemployment. And if that wasn't exciting enough, and believe me, it was, the really cool thing about this particular interview beyond that was that Juan Ronderos Torres happened to be here in the studio because he was taping Autismo y Familia, which, if those of you who don't know, is the Spanish portion of our show that airs on Fridays. So he happened to be in the studio, and with less than 3 minutes notice, we said, Juan, translate Temple Grandin into Spanish in real time. We, of course, asked Temple if that was okay with her, and she was thrilled. She was absolutely thrilled. It was so exciting, I could hardly stand it. So we have that interview coming up for you in just, it's like 17 minutes now. So, and that would be enough. We could just go home after that and say, let's call it a day, because that's really amazing. But wait till you hear who the other guest was that we had on Friday that we taped for you. It gets better and better here. So I'm glad you're here. It's a big day. I want to remind you that this entire show is meant to be interactive. We want you to participate. We want to hear from you guys. We want to know what you think, the questions that you have. But keep in mind, both guests that I had on, that I have on the show today were pre-taped on Friday, so you can't ask them a question in real time, but you can send me a question and that I can forward on to them. So that's kind of cool, right? But in any case, Kelby's going to show you some of the different ways that you can do that and some of the different ways that you can be watching the show and interacting with us. While he does that, I always like to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, so many things to do. Please sign up for our email list. If you are on the email list, then you got the notification yesterday that it was Temple Grandin that was going to be on today. And sometimes we get her on the live show or create a special hour when we've got her. So get on that list. You're going to, it's free. And then you get to know who's going to be on. And that's a really great thing to know. It's sort of like having a TV guide for Autism Live. All right. I also like to remind you that when you're on the home page, you can be watching the live show there because you can watch it on our live stream on our YouTube channel as well. But you can watch it on the home page. And when you do on Autism-Live, you can also use the live feature. That's the series of white boxes that are to the side of that screen. Put your cursor in the one that says your comments and start typing. That's really all you have to do. You don't have to log in. You don't have to create a username. You don't have to remember a password. You don't have to go and get your credit card out. None of that, because it's free and it's anonymous. And it's instant gratification that you send it and it comes here to me. Now, if I'm not here, because you're writing to me at a time when we're not live, it still comes here, and then I get to see it the next time I come in. And then we get to have a conversation, and more importantly, you get to have a conversation with our experts. So please use the live feature whenever it strikes you. We love it when you guys interact with us. I mentioned that we have experts, and that brings me to my next point, which is that we try to get as many experts on our show as we possibly can so that you guys can get to those resources and be able to ask questions and get to the help and support that you need. But do not be confused that I am not one of the experts. Let's just keep reminding you of that every single day, because nothing could be closer to the truth. I have the wrong thing up here, Kelby. But in any case, I'm not an expert. I am a parent, and I am a proud autism parent. I got an opportunity to say that over the weekend to a group of people. I went to the Autism Speaks kickoff event for the big Los Angeles walk. It was really a lovely event, and packed with parents and people who work in the field of autism. Just, I have to say, for those of you who don't live in the Los Angeles area, I was sad for you on Saturday. I was so proud to live in Los Angeles and to be able to meet all the different people that were there. And this is a very big year in Los Angeles because, as you may know, the World Games for the Special Olympics is coming to Los Angeles this summer, and they presented at this event. And I just was so excited for all the different things that we have for families in Los Angeles. I will be honest with you, it's still not enough. And here, all of us that are here in Los Angeles are still trying to get more services for people in Los Angeles. But it really made me think about what it's like for the rest of you around the world that don't have access to all of the things that we have access to here in Los Angeles. And it just, I just want you to know it made me more committed to being here and making sure that you get access to some of the things that we have, and that I encourage you to be a part of whatever is happening in your community to make these things happen. And it may be, we've seen this before, that those of you in other places of the world, you get committed to do something and you create something that no one else ever thought of having, including Los Angeles. So in any case, I started this with, I'm not an expert, I'm a parent, I'm a proud parent, and I'm a parent who, my son is doing so well that I'm lucky enough that I have some time to give back to the community. And I want to, in my role here, to connect you with the things that will help you. You guys have reminded me lately that I need to keep saying to all you, we can do this together, that you're not alone. That was one of the things that I mentioned when I spoke on Saturday, is that I felt horribly, horribly alone in the first year that my son was diagnosed. And when I went to my first walk for autism in Los Angeles, I saw a sea of people, and it made me realize that none of us is alone. And if we hold hands, right? You hold hands right here together, si se puede, we can do this. So I hope that you will take from this show whatever you need, that you will help drive what this show talks about by telling us the kinds of things that you need. And please, if you didn't get an answer the first time, please feel free to write again. I said this the other day that somebody wrote to us. I know for a fact that I lost one question from, I think it was from West Virginia, somebody who wrote in and the question went poof as I was reading it. So please write back again, because I don't have your information. You had sent an email and I don't have it. And that's not the only time that has happened. So, keep that in mind. Write in, write often. Okay. We like to start every morning with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to make sense of this term because our experts talk about this and talk about these terms, and we are always trying to make sense of it. And sometimes when we stop them and say, hey, I don't know what you're talking about, can you please fill me in on what this is? We don't even understand the explanation. Okay, now my bad, this says SD on here, but I forgot to tell Kelby that the D, while it's a capital D, has to be a smaller D than the S. So you're gonna see this term, when you see this in print, you're gonna see it looks slightly different than this. The D is still capital, but it is in a smaller script than the S. What does an SD mean? And you will hear our experts talk about, well, when the SD is this, if you're working in skills, you will see that anytime you have a lesson, it will say SD : and then there will be something after it. And you might think to yourself, What in the heck does SD stand for, and what does it mean? All right, so let's move on to our actual definition. SD is a circumstance or action that precedes reinforcement. What you talking about, Willis? What does that mean? And what does that have to do with us and with our kids and with ABA? So let's move on to our working definition here. SD is what you say or do to get the child to do the desired response. Now, this is why we use jargon, because something is so specific and it has to cover so many different things. So it's got to be specific and then it's got to be general. So stop and think about it, that if my target, the behavior that I want a child to do, is to sit down, what do I say or do to get them to do that? And in different circumstances, it's going to be different things. So I might say, sit down. That's the SD. If what I want is for the child to sit down, and the way I've chosen to go about it is to say, sit down, then the SD is sit down, and the target was that they sat in the chair, okay? But I don't have to say it right. For, a teacher in a classroom, I might just point, right? And I'm still trying to get the child to sit down. So my SD in this instance is pointing to the chair. And you can see that depending on what you're working on, you can change the SD and get to different parts of the lesson, right? Because sometimes I want somebody to understand what I'm saying. I could hold up a sign and say, sit down, and I could point to it, right? Now my SD is holding up a sign that says, sit down. And for different kids and at different points in their development, maybe one of those SDs is going to get me to the target. Eventually, I'm going to want the child to be able to understand all of those different things, and I might need to use different SDs before they start to get it. But the SD is the thing that you say or do to get the child or the individual to do the desired response. So stop and think about this in your life. I have a friend who will say to me, I can't stand it that my husband leaves his socks on the bedroom floor. This is not my husband, by the way. But this is like the thing that drives this woman crazy. So that's the target. She wants her husband to put the socks into the laundry bin. So what is the thing that she does to do that? Well, in her case, she pouts. It's not effective. It's not working. It's the wrong SD to get him to put the socks into the laundry basket. Do I know what the right SD is? No. But she can play with a bunch of different things in order to get to the behavior. So SD, what you say or what you do to get the person to do the desired behavior. That's really what it's all about. It's a powerful thing. So when you're reading through skills, it will say SD, and what SD stands for is discriminative stimulus. I don't know why the D is small when it's the word that comes first in the discriminative stimulus. I don't know, but it's one of those psychology things. And thus far, I haven't had to know what that is, but you need to know what it means for your life. SD, what you say or do to get the desired response. It's a good thing. Okay, moving on, we always have a question of the day for you. Our question today is, what's the hardest thing for you to teach? And you can think of this in any circumstance in your life. If you're a teacher, this does not have to be something that involves autism, right? Because right now we're just talking about teaching anyone to do anything. It could be something you're teaching yourself, something you're teaching your husband. It could be something you're teaching your dog. It could be something you're trying to teach 45 people in a lecture hall. But what's the hardest thing for you to teach? I am someone who likes to teach in terms of big, broad things, and teaching tiny, little things tries my patience, which is why I, struggled a little bit when we started using ABA with my son with autism, because it's all about breaking it down into those very finite things. Guess why we do that? Because it's so effective. So very effective. But I'd love to hear from you. What's the hardest thing for you to teach? And we'll talk about this a little bit later on in the show. Now, we always have a topic for the week. Can you guess what our topic is today before Kelby shows it? It's what's the target? This was something that came up in conversation with Dr. Grant Pichet last week that I think as Parents, and I'm a former educator. I don't know, you can be a former educator, once an educator, always an educator, right? This is something, though, as parents, we forget. And I do see sometimes that teachers forget. I'm going to tell a story a little bit later on about why it's so important to know what the target is. But if you stop and think about everything in your life, if you're trying to accomplish something, let's say that you have a goal that you're going to save $10,000 to go on a trip to Fiji, and you say that's what I'm going to do. If you've named the target and you've said this is, and you quantified it and said I got to raise $10,000 to go to Fiji, then it helps you to see whether you're succeeding or not, right? So that if you go to the mall tomorrow and you see a pair of Jimmy Choo shoes and you think, I really want those shoes, and you buy the shoes, and then later on you say, ooh, I didn't make how much money I was supposed to make for my goal. Why not? Oh, because I bought the Jimmy Choo shoes, right? It's just ever so much clearer. Instead of saying, well, someday I'd like to go to Fiji, and not setting the goal and saying, I need to raise $10,000 by this date in order to go to Fiji. What's the likelihood that you're going to make that goal if you don't say what the target is and keep that in mind, right? You know what they say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So if we're trying to teach something to somebody, it's very important that we know what the target is. If we say, okay, what we're trying to do is teach this individual how to comply with reasonable requests. Then, if that's really what we're teaching, then we have to be careful that we are reinforcing every lesson that we have and making sure that that individual knows that complying with reasonable requests is something that is good for them, right? And yet we forget that a lot. So we're going to devote a little bit of time later on after Temple Grandin to talk about why it's so important to keep the target in mind and why you may want to write it down on a Post-it and hang it in different places when you're working on something so that you keep the target in mind and don't get sidetracked. I know we all think, oh, I would never do that, and yet I do that on an hourly basis. So we'll talk about how to keep ourselves on track and why it's so super duper important. But we've got some exciting things on the show today, and I can't stand it anymore. We have to get to it. So some of the different things that we have going on in the show today. First, we have Dr. Temple Grandin. She's here. She's talking with, she's not actually here. She joined us via the phone, and she talked about teens, employment, and anxiety. And not only that, she talked about it with Juan Ronderos Torres, translating what she was saying so that for those of our friends who are Spanish speaking, they get to enjoy this as well. And for those of you who don't speak Spanish fluently, I just have to say it sounds beautiful. I was blown away. I was like, this sounds so good. We have a little bit of autism news for you that I think you're going to find really interesting. And then I promised you another big guest. Dr. Julie Schweitzer from UC Davis Mind Institute is also, we have a tape we interviewed with her on Friday as well, talking about a new study that she's doing on cognition. And she's looking for some participants for that study. But even if you are not in the Sacramento area, I think you're really going to find it interesting what she has to say about the kinds of work that they're doing at the Mind Institute and how you might want to be involved. So all of that, plus looking at your answers and questions that you guys have been writing in throughout the weekend that are just for me, and much, much more. So stick with us. I think, Kelby, are we going to break or are we going to go right to Dr. Grandin? All right, we are not even going to take a break because it's that good. We are going to just go to our tape with Dr. Temple Grandin, and you'll notice that it is myself and Juan Ronderos Torres. We had her on the phone. This was filmed on Friday. You will notice that I've got some earpiece issues, which is why my hand is in my ear most of the time so that I could hear her. But she's amazing, y'all. Here it is, Dr. Temple Grandin. Welcome to Autism Live. We have a very special guest on the phone with us. Temple Grandin is with us on the phone, and here in the studio with us we have Juan Ronderos Torres from Autismo y Familia. He's going to be translating what Temple says to us so that we can reach both our English-speaking audience and our Spanish-speaking audience. So Temple, first of all, thank you for being willing to be on the phone with us today.
It's great to be here.
We so enjoy whenever you have a moment to talk with us. And in particular today, Temple, I want to talk to you a little bit about, we've been talking a lot on the show about autism and employment. And I know you've got a lot to say with us about how we prepare our young kids and our teenagers and our young adults for employment. So what would you like for our audience to know about how do we get our kids ready to be in the workforce?
Okay, autism is a big spectrum, so I'm going to limit my comments right now to individuals that are that can talk, that have a more or less normal speech. And the first thing is learning job skills, and that needs to start when they're like 12, 13 years old. It could be a volunteer job at the church, setting up chairs. It could be working in a farmer's market, but they've got to learn that discipline and responsibility of a job.
Wonderful. And I'm going to have Juan translate for us very quickly.
Okay, so Temple dice que autismo tiene un área muy grande, diferentes niveles de autismo. Ella ahorita solamente va a hablar del área de las personas que puedan hablar, que son funcionalmente que puedan hablar. Y esta área, ella dice que lo primero que tienen que aprender son las habilidades de trabajar. Y estas habilidades se deben aprender desde los 13 años en adelante, trabajando en supermercados, en tiendas, ¿no es cierto? Que se puedan relacionar y contar dinero estas personas.
How exciting is this? Okay, and so Temple, your mom talks about a lot of different things that you did when you were a teenager that helped you to be ready to go to school and to be in the job market. What do you think was one or two things that really helped you?
She lined up different jobs for me to do. When I was 13, a sewing job with a seamstress. When I went to boarding school, the headmaster set it up so I would clean horse stalls. And when I was in college, I did career-relevant internships. It's very important to have lots of experience with jobs, and volunteer work does count as long as it's on a schedule before the kid graduates from high school or college.
All right, I'm going to let Juan translate.
Ok, bueno, Temple dice que para conseguir un trabajo es muy importante que el niño se involucre en actividades comunitarias, que tengan un horario donde el niño tenga una responsabilidad en ayudar a la comunidad a trabajar, para que cuando una vez el niño se gradúe del colegio, ¿no es cierto?, del 12º grado, pues ya tenga esa experiencia para poderle ayudar a conseguir un trabajo.
Thank you.
It's also really important to develop the child's area of strength. When I was a young child and 8 years old, my ability in art was always encouraged. For another child, it might be ability in mathematics. That needs to be encouraged, and if he can do work above grade level, then he should be doing work above grade level.
Okay, Juan's going to translate.
Ok, bueno, Temple dice que es muy importante desde que el niño tenga una temprana edad de apoyarlo y alentarlo en el área que él tenga más habilidad, ¿no es cierto?, en la que se destaque más. En el caso de Temple, ella era muy buena en el arte y dibujar, entonces sus padres siempre la ayudaban y la alentaban a que dibujara. En otro niño puede ser matemáticas, entonces ayudarlo y apoyarlo a que mejore en sus matemáticas, porque esta es la habilidad que le va a ayudar al niño más adelante con su trabajo.
Temple, I wonder if you would talk a little bit to our parents of teenagers. These are particularly hard years for anyone, but for our kids who are on the spectrum, they can be especially challenging. A lot of things, anxiety issues and bullying issues. Is there anything that you'd like to say to our parents of teens to help them to get through these difficult years?
I was bullied and teased in high school. It was the worst part of my life. And the only places I was not bullied was specialized interests, like horseback riding, showing horses, electronics lab. It's very important to get these kids involved with specialized interests. It could be being in the school play and theater. It could be music, chess club, computer programming club. You need to get these kids involved in specialized interests where there's a shared interest with peers.
All right, I'm going to let Juan translate.
Bueno, Temple dice que cuando ella era muy pequeña le hacían mucho bullying, ¿no es cierto? A ella la molestaban mucho en la escuela y ella dice que es muy importante para los niños hoy en día en estar involucrados en una actividad donde ellos tengan un gran interés y tengan un interés en común con sus demás compañeros. Y esto es muy importante porque en esas áreas, en la opinión de Temple, era cuando no la molestaban y no le hacían bullying, ¿no es cierto? Porque esos niños estaban interesados tenían un mismo interés en común. Entonces es muy importante que los padres involucren a sus niños desde temprana edad, ya sea en arte, ya sea en electrónicos, ¿okay? O cualquier actividad que sea de interés común entre los niños, en una obra de teatro, ¿no es cierto? En actuación es muy importante.
Wonderful. And so, Temple, maybe if you would talk with us a little bit about the anxiety portion of the teen years, because I know you've shared openly before that you had some anxiety issues. Maybe if you could tell us some things that you've done over the years to help to give everybody some hope.
I had a lot of anxiety problems and panic attacks. And when I went into my 20s, they got worse and worse and worse. And I had to take antidepressant medications. For some individuals, antidepressants can really, really help on anxiety. And if you want to read more about that, you can get my book, Thinking in Pictures, and read the chapter on anxiety that's titled A Believer in Biochemistry. And I'm pretty sure this book is available in Spanish.
Ooh, yes, I think it is. I think you're absolutely right. All right, Juan's going to translate.
Bueno, le están preguntando a Temple que cuál es su opinión o un consejo para niños que tienen mucha ansiedad, ¿no es cierto? Que están creciendo con mucha ansiedad o ataques de pánico. Y ella dice que cuando ella estaba creciendo, a ella le dieron o sea, batalló mucho con ansiedad y ataques de pánico. Y ella tiene un libro, ¿no es cierto? Un libro donde trata este tema de la depresión, ¿no es cierto? Y ella, el capítulo de este libro que ella le recomienda leer se llama... El libro se llama Pensando en Imágenes, ¿ok? Y este libro está en español y hay un capítulo que se llama Creencias, ¿no es cierto?, en química, ¿no es cierto?, porque ella tomó muchos antidepresivos y para algunos niños antidepresivos de verdad puede ser una ayuda muy grande para ayudarle a sobreponer a este obstáculo de la depresión o la ansiedad.
Wonderful. It sounds so good when you say it, Juan. It's so pretty when Juan says it. And then for those individuals who are teenagers, Temple, who are dealing with some of these issues, do you feel like it gets better? There's a huge campaign for other things that says it gets better. Do you feel like it gets better when our teenagers get older?
Well, I found that communicating with adults was a whole lot easier than communicating with teenagers. And what the child needs to understand is that communicating with teenagers isn't really a life skill that you need. But I can't emphasize enough the importance of getting involved in specialized interests that can turn into careers. You know, things like theater, for example, or music, or computer programming, or art, graphic design, things of this sort, which are activities that you can do with peers.
Wonderful. We're going to let Juan translate.
Ok, bueno, le están preguntando aquí a Temple que si tiene algún consejo para los niños que ahorita tienen alguna dificultad en su vida diaria, ¿no es cierto?, en adolescentes de 12 a 15 años o más, pero le están preguntando si cree que la vida se vuelve un poco más fácil, ¿no es cierto? Ahorita pueden que estén pasando por una situación muy difícil como bullying y si se les va a hacer un poco más fácil la vida. Ella dice que tratando con adolescentes, cuando los niños están en la escuela tratando con sus compañeros, es mucho más difícil que tratar con adultos. Con adultos no hay problemas de bullying, ¿no es cierto? O de esto que los molestan, pero en verdad ella hace un énfasis, ¿no es cierto? Les dice que por favor no les puede decir qué tan importante es, que es muy importante que lleven a los niños a actividades que tengan intereses similares a los de sus compañeros, que estos intereses se puedan volver en una carrera, ¿no es cierto? En una educación, en un trabajo para un niño en el futuro, como actuación o programación de computadoras. Estos niños con autismo tienen cada uno tiene un don muy especial para ciertas áreas. Entonces, involucren a sus niños en eso, actuación o música, para que su niño tenga un interés similar ¿no es cierto? Un interés común con sus compañeros, así va a ser mucho más fácil interactuar con sus compañeros y esto se va a poder ayudarle en el futuro a volverse una carrera para su niño.
Wonderful. We love it that you support the Arts Temple. We think that that's such a wonderful, wonderful thing for our kids.
Well, for some kids, you see, in my book, The Autistic Brain, which has been translated into Spanish, I talk about 3 different types of specialized thinking. The first is the visual thinker art type of mind, artist. Another type is the mathematical type of mind. They'd be good at engineering and computer programming. And then the third type is a word thinker. They'd be good at writing.
Wonderful. I'm going to let Juan translate that for us.
I'm trying to not make it too long.
No, está perfecto. Temple aquí nos está compartiendo de su libro, ¿no es cierto?, que habla un poco más de estas ayudas que estamos hablando. Y el libro se llama en inglés The Autistic Brain, ¿ok? En español es El cerebro autista, ya está en español. Este cerebro, ella comunica, ¿no es cierto?, nos relata cómo hay 3 áreas del cerebro autista, y es el arte, las matemáticas y las palabras, perdón. Entonces, en el arte, unos niños autistas tienen ese don de arte y son muy artísticos, ¿no es cierto? Y les gusta pintar, dibujar y cosas similares del arte. Después hay otros niños que son más matemáticos, programación de computadores, matemáticas. Y hay otros niños que son más enfocados en palabras y son muy buenos escribiendo y son escritores. Entonces, estas son las áreas que le podemos ayudar a nuestros niños.
And I have shared.
I just want to say one other little thing.
Yes.
I forgot to mention that the mathematical brain often is also a musical brain and good at music.
Oh, good. So translate that, Juan.
Ok, se le olvidó allá decir que muchas veces el cerebro matemático del niño autista es también muy bueno para la música, ¿no es cierto? Es un cerebro que va en correlación con la música.
And Temple, I've told you before that hearing you talk about these 3 areas of the brain helped me so much to understand how my brain works and how different it is than how my son's brain works. Because
the thing is that
yes,
the thing that's the same is autistic brains tend to be good at one thing and bad at something else. That's the pattern.
I'm going to let Juan translate that.
Ok, entonces Temple nos está diciendo que el cerebro autista tiende a ser muy bueno en un área y no tan bueno en otra área. Okay, y esto es lo que podemos aprender en este libro.
And it is fascinating once you begin to understand your child from that perspective, to be able to look at that. And you were able, Temple, to recommend a great many things for my son who has a mathematic brain. And one of the things that you got us started on was Khan Academy. Which has been so helpful to him. And I wonder, because I know we only have a couple more minutes with you. I know you've been so wonderful and written so many books, Temple. Are you working on another book now?
I'm working mainly on some livestock stuff right now.
Wonderful, wonderful. And so I know you've got some important events coming up. I know that there's an event that you're coming here to Los Angeles for, I think in early April, that's called Temple,
yes.
Grandin and Friends.
Yes.
Is there anything you want to share with our audience?
Well, I just want to see these kids be successful. And on the little kids, we've got to teach social skills. And when a child makes a social mistake, such as maybe eating his meat with his hands, do not say no. You give the instruction. The mistake that parents make is they say no when you should be giving the instruction, such as use the fork to eat your meat.
I'm going to let Juan translate that.
Ok, bueno, Temple tiene un evento aquí en Los Ángeles en abril, ¿cierto? Les podemos dar más información más adelante, pero ella dice que ella quiere ver a los niños prosperar, ¿no es cierto? Y ser exitosos en su carrera. Entonces, lo que ella nos está diciendo, que para los niños pequeños, ¿no es cierto?, lo más importante son social skills, ¿no es cierto? Estas son las habilidades sociales, como el niño se relaciona. Y muchos padres hacen el error tan grande de decirle al niño no, ¿no es cierto?, cuando el niño comete algún error. En vez de decirle al niño, así es como se tiene que hacer. No le digan no. Si el niño está comiendo con las manos, no le digan no, no come con las manos, sino dice, mira, come con el tenedor. Eso es el gran consejo que nos tiene aquí Temple.
Temple, we thank you for all the work that you do, and we appreciate you taking the time to be with us on the phone. I'm going to ask you to stay on the phone for just a minute after we finish the interview because I have something that I wanted to ask you privately. But thank you
Okay,
so
fine.
much for being with us today.
You're very welcome. It was good to be here.
And we want to thank Juan for his wonderful and beautiful translation. What you say sounds so beautiful in Spanish, Temple.
Good.
And we're gonna now go to a message and be back with more Autism Live after these messages.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
So welcome back. Did you love it? Isn't she amazing? I have to say, if you get an opportunity to see Temple live in person, you must treat yourself to that. She is coming to Los Angeles. I think we had said that the date was in April. It has now been moved to May 20th. She's doing an event that's called Temple, Grandin, and Friends. It's at the Nokia Theater here in Los Angeles. And the entire event is to kickstart a really amazing organization that is helping put individuals with autism to work. We have Joanne Lara, who's going to be on the show in a couple of weeks. Actually, we're going to have her on April 1st, kicking off Autism Awareness Month. She's the one who's spearheading this entire Temple, Grandin, and Friends event. We're very excited about that. But wherever you are in the world, Temple speaks on a regular basis. And if you go to Future Horizons, I think it's futurehorizons.org, you should be able to find all of the speaking dates that she's doing in the next few months. And she does make make it a point to travel around the country and connect with parents and with teachers and with individuals who are on the autism spectrum. It's just awesome to meet her. I got to meet her like a year and a half ago for the first time and interview her for the first time. And it's something that gets discussed in my family a lot because we have pictures of it that are displayed in our house. It was a very big deal for me. And it was a day she was going to be speaking somewhere at, I think it was at Redlands College. And so we drove out to Redlands and had made the arrangements to be able to interview her. And she had several other people who were going to be interviewing her as well. And I got there early because I didn't want to be late, you know, and I was still waiting for my crew, and we were going to be interviewing her in a hotel. And I sat there waiting until it was my time, and the other interview finished. My crew still hadn't gotten there, and it was still like an hour before we were going to be interviewing her. She was supposed to be able to have lunch. Well, she came into the lobby. I'm sitting there. She walks in, and she sits down across from me. And you know me, I don't have a problem speaking, and I had a problem speaking. I could not formulate thoughts or words. I was starstruck, you know what I mean? And I thought, well, I have to say something because it will be awkward later on when I'm interviewing her, when she's like, you just sat across from me in the lobby for the longest time, and why didn't you introduce yourself? So I stood up and I said, you know, Dr. Grandin, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm your next interview. And she said, well, that's not for an hour. I'm supposed to be able to have lunch. And I said, yes, I don't want to infringe upon your time. I just wanted to say what a pleasure it is to meet you. And she was like, okay, well, you know, it's not your time, but thank you. And I have work to do. And I was like, yes, absolutely. I'm so sorry. And I thought, oh, I'm just an idiot, and sat back down. And then, you know, and she finished what she was, because she had been already writing something. She's very, you know, keeps to a schedule and does a lot of work, high level work, and connects with people around the world, right? And it was sort of, you know, I imagine what it's like meeting the president, where they, you know, got 38 things going on at the same time. So then at some point, the other people that had just interviewed her came in, and I was talking, it was for the movie Autism and Love, and I was talking to the director about that. We've had them on the show as well. And he was having a conversation with me and said, you know, how did you get interested in autism? And I said, oh, I have a son who's on the autism spectrum. Temple's head comes up and she says, oh, you're an autism parent? And I said, yes. And then she was like, how old is your child? What, you know, how is he doing? What are her what are his interests? What are you doing for him? Are you making sure that this happens? And she's taken out her notebook and she's writing me notes. It was just an entirely different thing. As soon as she knew that I wasn't just a reporter, that I was a parent, it didn't matter what she had on her schedule. She wanted to talk to me, and she wanted to know about my kid. And I thought I was going to split into a million pieces and lay on the floor and just, you know, be like Jell-O. I was so excited. And it really was an amazing day for us. And I mentioned in this interview that she was the one who turned us on to Khan Academy. It's spelled Khan Academy. It's free. Anybody can go on there and take classes. And there are a wide variety of classes, but all last summer, my son and I were taking a class side by side where we were learning how to do computer animation. And I would love to tell you that I'm brilliant at it, but I'm not. But we learned a lot. He can do that now. He gets it. He gets the whole coding thing, and I'm still, you know, working on finishing that class up. But it's amazing. And to have that at all of our fingertips, if you have the internet, and I know if you're watching this that you do, you can learn a new skill to get you job ready. You can help your child to go over something that was done at school that maybe they need some more information about, or you can excel your child past what's being learned at school. It's pretty incredible. They have college level classes that you can take, and they're taught in a very interactive, you see a video, they have you do the lesson interactive right there. It's just heaven on a stick, you guys. It's wonderful, and I would not have known about that had it not been for Temple Grandin. So it was a really, really fun day for all of us. My son now, recently, last year, we went to a Future Horizon event so that we could interview Temple again. In fact, we had Nancy Alspaugh Jackson interview her because she had never gotten to, and boy, I just wanted her to have that experience. And but we took my son with me, and he got an opportunity to meet Temple and take a picture with her. And he took a selfie with her. Just love it. I encourage all of you, put it on your bucket list, make it happen, because she's an amazing individual. She makes you have so much hope. I know somebody had written in a question and said, that they want to know how Temple, let me get it right here. Do you know how Temple handled classes she wasn't interested in? She certainly excelled to be able to get into university, and how did she motivate herself? And thank you. We've had Eustacia Cutler on as well, and I will say this, like any good mother-daughter pairing, their stories don't quite match, right? Same thing would be true if you had my mother come in here, our stories wouldn't quite match. But two women who have so much love and respect for each other. But I would imagine that Eustacia would have said to the answer to this question that part of it was that she really motivated her. And actually, as I think about it, I don't think Temple's answer would be much different, because she's talked before about the limits that her mother set for her. That, you know, if you watch some of the interviews that we've done with her before, she talks about that her mother said, you can't just sit and draw horses all the time. You can go to the stable and you can, spend time with the horses and do this, but you have to actually go to your other classes. But her mother did not expect her to pass them. Her mother did not put that requirement on it and say that you have to get a B or an A or any of that. She said you have to do the work, and that's what gets you the time to do the things that you want to do. ABA, right? If you want the reinforcer, you have to be willing to do this thing and not necessarily be successful at it, which is something that gives me hope as a parent. In my discussions with Temple, she has said, as she just talked about it in this interview, that there are different kinds of brains, and we need to make sure that we play to the strengths, not let them only do that, but play to the strengths, and has said that if you have a child that, like mine, that is the mathematical brain, that it's not unusual to see those kids struggle with what she refers to as baby math. The kind of stuff that they do up until the last few grades of high school. She refers to it as baby math, and that it tends to drive people who understand math crazy. We force my son to do things and to learn things the way they do them. I will be so glad when he is in the more accelerated math in school, because it is an exercise in frustration. Having to show them the work has slowed his process down. We make him follow the rules of the school, but I've given up on him getting an A on it to demonstrate his ability with math. He tests being genius with math, but he can't get an A in math because he's got to do it their way. And I get why he needs to do it their way, but as Temple will tell you, it's not a true indication of what our kids are capable of. And as far as anything that they're not interested in, trying to put the element of what they're interested in into it, and sometimes just getting through it. Just getting through it and offering them a reinforcer for afterwards. Honestly, she describes that there were classes that she just wasn't about, and that mentally she was down at the stable. But she got through it. And constantly reminds us about how great it was for her mother to teach her what would make her successful, teach her manners, to teach her how important it was to shake hands and the social graces. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, we thank Dr. Grandin for doing that wonderful interview, and I really have to say a big shout out and thanks to Juan Ronderos Torres for being available on less than 3 minutes notice to translate for us. I just made it so special, so thank you to Juan. If you don't know about Autismo y Familia, it is our Spanish version of our show, and that happens on Fridays. Usually a new video comes out at 3 o'clock on Fridays. So for those of you who are Spanish speaking or have friends who are Spanish speaking, we encourage you. It has its own playlist now on our YouTube channel. All right, we are going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about why it's important to know what the target is and how we can keep ourselves on track knowing what the target is. Stick with us.
Hello, fellow activists. Last week, we talked about step number 1, accept and embrace this challenge. Now we're moving on to step number 2, educate yourself. After my son Wyatt was diagnosed, I put up a sign over my home office that said Autism Central. I went to school in my home office every night after my husband and Wyatt had gone to bed because I was determined to learn everything there was about autism. That's because knowledge is power. Visit all the autism websites you can, read all the books you can, learn about all the organizations that are out there that offer free guides to help you. Some of them even offer mentors to help guide you. Find out about local support services. Find out about what educational services your child is entitled to. Get to every autism conference and seminar you can. I'll never forget the first autism conference that I went to. The first speaker was a beautiful, brilliant woman named Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet. She spoke about a therapy called Applied Behavioral Analysis, or ABA. She told about how it could improve the life of children with autism, and in some cases, recover them. Now, despite the fact that Wyatt had been diagnosed for over a year, nobody had told me about this therapy. I remember calling my husband on the cell phone and saying, "Honey, I met the woman who is going to help improve Wyatt's life." And I'm happy to say that 8 years later, that's true. Are you feeling a little overwhelmed by all the information that's out there? Well, you're not alone. But try different approaches for your child. Trust your gut. Just 40 short years ago, mothers were told if their child had autism that they would have to be institutionalized, and in some cases they were actually blamed for their child's autism for failing to bond with the child. That was called refrigerator mother syndrome. Well, thank goodness times have changed. So until next time, learn everything you can about autism and keep the faith.
Welcome back to Autism Live. So today, one of the things, and in fact all this week, what we're talking about is what's the target and why is that really important? So I want to give you an illustration, something from my life that I've talked about briefly before on the show. Not trying to call anybody out, but there was a moment in which I really got it as a parent. This is why the target is important. It's important that your teachers know what the target is. Okay, so my son was in, I think, second grade. And he, as part of his program, had a one-on-one aide, and he had a speech pathologist who worked with him on a regular basis. They did something that they called the lunch bunch, where he would go to a classroom during lunch on Fridays with a couple of other kids, some of them who didn't need speech and some of them who did. They would meet together, and it was 6 kids at a time. They would have a lunch group, and usually the speech and language pathologist would have some sort of an activity. Often it was a game that they would play at the lunch bunch, and it would encourage their eating and they're playing a game. And sometimes she would throw out a topic and say, "Hey, what did you guys think about this?" to get conversations started so that they would be talking in a social way. And she would have the peers there to be able to have things happen in a very natural and organic way, and to be able to prompt Jem and say to him, "Hey, your friend just said to you that they like robots. Don't you like robots? Don't you want to say something about the fact that I like robots?" So that they could be, have this contrived circumstance where something natural is happening and that they could give direction. And then he would have another speech session every week where it would just be one-on-one, and sometimes they would talk about, "Hey, in that moment when, the other child said this, did you know you could say this," right? So that she wasn't always having to be intrusive in the moment. Okay, so we're trying to set up a petri dish. What's the target? The target is for him to engage in social language. Now, if you're trying to engage in, and if that's the whole target, then we need to let other things that we might be working on not be a part of this conversation. And we need to let other things that may come up take a second backseat to social language, right? But appropriate social language. Okay. So the speech and language pathologist has a student teacher come in who is going to be facilitating the group for a couple weeks. That's great. She's still there in the classroom and directing. But at a certain point, with student teachers, they need to take over, right? And then it is incumbent upon the speech and language pathologist to not really in the moment, and you never want to discredit a teacher in the moment when they're interacting with a child. You can clean things up later on, unless it's abusive, right? So great. So my son goes to the class one day that the speech and language the student teacher is leading the class, and Jem has an expectations because he's been doing this for a while. He goes and he really has an agenda. He wants to be playing a game, and so he gets to class and he says, "What game are we going to be playing?" Right? And she says, "Well, just take a seat. We're going to get started in a minute." He says, "But no, really, honestly, what game are we going to be playing?" And she says, "I'm going to let you know that in a minute." So already he's a little fatoutzed with her that come on, like I asked you a question, you didn't really answer me. This is how social language. I see this as an opportunity in which to take his frustration and say, sometimes you ask a question and somebody doesn't want to tell you because maybe they have a secret and there's all these reasons why, right? But she had a lot going on right then, and, heaven knows, I've been a student teacher before. It's not easy, right? And we're all going to make mistakes, whether we're student teachers or not. Okay, and I'm not saying that she did make a mistake. I'm just saying that maybe there was a teaching moment that could have, all right, but it wasn't. Okay, so then fast forward a little bit, and she discloses after the kids have their lunches out, and she discloses to them, "We're not playing a game today." And Jem says, "Well, why not?" And she says, which is a great question, right? This appropriate social language. And she says, "Because I'm in charge today and we're not playing a game today." And my son, who has just come from the playground where he was interacting with his peers, and this is supposed to be a thing where he's interacting with his peers still, looks up at the student teacher and says, "Well, that's weak." And she saw this as the ultimate in disrespect. And he had a little token economy that he worked on throughout the day that said how he was doing. And if he got a certain number of stars, then he got to play his video games, which were very important to him then, still are. And she said, "You lose all of your stars for the day because you were just inappropriate and rude." And he had been promised that if he got all the stars that day, that he was going to get something really wonderful. I think it was that we were going to go to a specific restaurant that he really liked and had been kind of saving for. And they said, "Well, you've lost all of your stars for the day." This is what the student teacher did. And nobody in the moment wanted to say to her, "You can't do that," because she can't, right? She doesn't have the authority to take away stars from another day. My son, from another period of class, my son knew that and said, "You can't do that. You're not. And so now, And so there was a meeting after school about, that I needed to back up the student teacher and have him lose his stars for the day. And I said, that's not going to happen, which is not necessarily the right thing for me as a parent, but I said, let's all back up for a minute. It's not about supporting the teacher. It's not about, I definitely think he needs to have a conversation about what's appropriate to say to who, but isn't that what social language is all about? That another teaching, a bigger teaching moment went by the wayside. Yes, what he said was 100% inappropriate to that teacher. I won't stand for that. As a teacher, teachers get respect, and he needs to learn to be respectful for teachers. But we're not going to punish him and take away stuff that he already earned into being respectful to teachers, right? We need to teach him that that's an inappropriate thing. Here's a child with autism who just came off the playground, came in, he's in a setting where he's supposed to be interacting with his peers, and it totally would have been okay if he had said that to one of his peers. If he had said to his peer, hey, what game are we playing? And the peer had said, we're not going to play a game today. And he said, why? Why aren't we playing a game? And the kid said, because I'm in charge and we're not doing that. Totally would have been appropriate for him to say, well, that's weak. That's not a good, totally appropriate. And so all we needed to do was teach him, you can say that to your friend, you can't say that to the teacher, which is a tough little lesson to learn, but that's social language, which was the target for the class, to teach him social language, not to punish him for using it inappropriately. And that was, it was really difficult because there were emotions and the student teacher was offended and felt that I, thought it was okay that my son was rude to her. And I kept going back to, what's the target? If the target of what you're trying to do is teach somebody social language and your main target is to teach it amongst peers and he just used it in the wrong place, let's not get so hung up on, was it disrespectful? Let's just teach him what we need to teach him because that's the target. Another example that I like to use is my friend who I was sitting with her at lunch and she said to me, my 5-year-old is so turning into a teenager. He rolls his eyes. He doesn't listen to me. There's no compliance. I don't know what we're going to do. It's just bad news bears. And, she turned and said something to him. He was done eating lunch, and he got up and with the other boys and started to run off. He rolled his eyes at her and started to run off away from him. And she said, "Stop." And it was like this blood-curdling stop. And he wanted to go play with his friends. He had a mouthful of sandwich, and he totally stopped on a dime. And she said, "Come here right now." And she had the bony finger, the mom bony finger up, about ready to give a lecture. Which, please, you know, if you come and see me in my home environment, you will see that I do this as well. I'm not saying that, you know, this is just like, how could she have done this? It's normal. We go to that. We go, I will not be talked to in that way. I did that this morning, in fact. But she had the finger up and she was going to tell him off. But it struck me what she just had said was, he isn't compliant. He doesn't listen. And that what just happened was he was about to go do something that he really wanted to do. She said stop. And what did he do? He stopped. He complied. He listened. If compliance is the most important thing in the moment, then him being rude and rolling his eyes and running off to begin with is secondary to the fact that he complied in this moment. So she called him back over and called him back over in a way that he knew he was going to get yelled at. He knew it. You could see it written on his face. And yet he came anyway. That's the ultimate in compliance. He came when he knew he was going to get yelled at. And so as he approached, I went, "Wow, that was amazing. What a good boy you are." And he went, "What?" And the mom turned to me and looked at me like, "What is wrong with you?" And I said, "That's just so amazing. Your mom said stop and you stopped. Your mom said come here and you came. You're such a good boy." And he was like, "Well, I kind of am, aren't I?" And she went, "You know what? You are a good boy. I hadn't thought about that, but I said stop. You said stop. I said come here and you came here. Thank you for doing that and thank you for listening to me." Now they hug and it's this lovely, lovely moment. And she said, "But you know, I would appreciate it if you didn't roll your eyes." And he said, "Okay, Mom," and gave her another hug and he went off and played. And, you know, it just drove home for me that we sit and we'll say things. We go, "Well, I wish my child could do this." But if we make that the target, if that's the thing that we really want more than anything else, everything else has to go in the back seat for a moment. We had somebody who wrote in and said to Dr. Grandpichet, you know, I want my son, I'm reading with him, but I want him to stop checking to get approval from me at every single word, that he'll say the word and then look at me to see if it's right. And how do we do this? And one of the things that Dr. Grandpichet brought up is that for the moment, we're not going to work on reading. For the moment, we're going to work on fading the prompt. That now is that's the most important thing going on. We'll have plenty of time to go back to learning reading once we get this in place, but it's impeding the reading. So we've got to take care of this first, which means we're not going to work on the reading things. We're only going to work on this in this moment in time. So, and gave specific instructions about using known words and fading her prompt about that. Super duper important that we always know what's the target, that we're focused on that. One of the things that I think it's really important to do, just like in anything in life, name it, right? If you can't language it, what it is you're working on, you're probably not going to be as successful as you would be if you could name it, right? And I think it's useful to write it down somewhere. Now, once upon a time, I went to a webinar where somebody said, you know, write down the thing that you're working on and put it on the refrigerator. And I was furious and said, oh my gosh, you know, if I wrote down all the things that we're working down and put them on the refrigerator, it would fill my refrigerator. But it did make me stop and think about, because, you know, sometimes our kids are working on 40 programs at the same time. And within one program, they've got 10 different exemplars, right? And you can't put all of that on the refrigerator. But I think it's worthwhile to think to yourself and say, what are the 3 most important things that I as a parent am working on with my child right now? Let the team worry about everything else. You'll be able to uphold what they're doing, right? To maintain it. But if you really think to yourself, okay, you know, my child is 3, so the main things that I'm working on now are eye contact, compliance, and nanding, right? And that may not be the same for all 3-year-olds. But just as an example, so getting compliance that when I ask them to do something that's reasonable, that they're doing it, and then I'm reinforcing for that you set that as a priority with a 3-year-old, that you're getting good eye contact, not scary staring eye contact, but good eye contact, and that you're working on manding, that they request, even if it's one word, that anytime they do that, you stop everything else that's going on. You're in the car and they ask for juice. You're still driving, but you go, good talking, and you ask somebody else to get them the juice, or you pull over and you give them the juice if it's at all possible, because you're rewarding that manding. When you target those kinds of things and give it that kind of focus, you see that our kids make more progress. They do it faster. So knowing what the target is, keeping that mindful, teaching the people around you that we're not going to address everything that the kid is doing. I need to learn this again as a parent of a tween, because when I go someplace with my son, if I don't say this is what I'm working on, I pick at him constantly. Stand up, make eye contact, make sure you're doing this, make sure that, right? I didn't do that on Saturday when we went to that Autism Speaks kickoff. I took my son with me and my husband, and I said to my son, before we go in, there's 2 things that I want you to be working on. That whenever someone talks to you and I introduce you to somebody, that you make good eye contact and that you be, very interested in what they say and don't go back to your phone. If you'll do those things, I'm taking you to In-N-Out after. And we went to In-N-Out. So it was wonderful. And I didn't have to be picking at him the whole time, because I don't like it when I'm picking at him. Pick your targets. Choose your battles, pick your targets, and reward those. And don't let other stuff take you off task. If you have to write it on your hand, put it on your phone. We talk about all these things to remind kids how to stay on task. We can do the same thing for ourselves. I can give myself a 10-minute reminder, this is the target that we're working on if I need it, right? Everybody has different things that they need. Okay, we're way past time for the A word, so I want to go to the A word. This is the ongoing documentary being made by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, following a little boy, Jack Riley, and he's got a bunch of targets that he's working on. So let's drop into his house. They've been doing therapy now for, I think, a little over a week, and this might be the first clinic that they go to. Let's take a look. This is the A word.
Hi, Jack Riley. Look at me. Good looking, buddy. I brought some toys to play with today. Is that cool? Okay, you want to play? Say,
Therapy, that one-on-one, when kids have been in an environment where no one understands them, and then you finally put them in an environment where they understand all the consequences, of where they see, if they did something that was supposed to be done, they get reinforced for it.
say, yeah, there we go. Good job.
For the first time, kids like him start to understand kind of interaction, because it's made very clear in therapy. We'll start just like all therapy, which is we start with compliance.
Do this. Good job. It's your turn.
Really working on getting him to listen to us, listen to a few directions like stand up or come here.
This is come here. All right, bud? Hey, try by yourself, okay? Come here. All right, you did it. Good job. See, that was so easy.
The idea is that we had to get his attention first. And once you get a good foundation of compliance, then his therapy would be a combination of at the table, where it's very clear and succinct language, combined with just more play.
You say, what is that? Banana, that's right. Banana. What else do you see? Carrots. Good talking.
Then we look at language, making sure that he can make his desired requests and needs met, getting him to figure out that, hey, I'm learning these words, and these words are actually useful. It teaches them the idea of communication and not using another person as a tool.
Okay, sure. Here you go.
And then also what's important to the family. What behaviors or what areas of focus do they need help with?
One goal, I don't know how we're going to get there, but one of the things I've noticed that's different about him is I'll see a 2-year-old in one of our little restaurants that we can take him, and the kid just feeds himself lunch. Now Jack feeds himself pancakes, he feeds himself applesauce, but most everything else we have to feed him, and I'm really looking forward to the day where he just eats.
Okay, so that's banana by a spoon. He likes the taste of banana, he doesn't mind the texture in his mouth, but when you get the visual into it, he gets very upset. So it just strikes me that it's all behavioral.
He's playing defensive ball right now.
And there was banana in that yogurt too, so he eats it every day. And he gets so upset, so offended.
I think a lot of his issues with eating have developed into behavioral issues. I think he may have had texture issues, and I think he probably still has a lot of sensory issues, but I think a lot of it now is habit.
I think for Jack Riley, he was very tactile defensive in his mouth. He just doesn't like the feeling of it. And then it moves into a routine. It moves into the rigidity of autism where they only want to eat certain things. They like what is familiar and they like to do the same things over and over. And I think the fact that he's not eating food where he really has to chew, that's going to affect his oral motor development, which will affect his language and how clear he is. Getting some of that muscle development going in his face and his mouth, because you're going to have to use a lot of those muscles to be able to make sounds and make words.
What are you doing, kiddo? So silly.
It is Thursday night, day 2 of our official ABA services have kicked in, and we are getting ready for bed. We run our energies off at night before bedtime. After the intensity of ABA, it's shocking that he has any energy. We think he'll sleep very well tonight. They're definitely pushing him to say sounds and do things he's not used to doing. He had a few meltdowns, and he did okay. He's gonna be so smart. Bye-bye.
Welcome back. That's the A word. I love this series. I love this family, and I love that we all have an opportunity to have a window into their lives and see this intervention and what it looks like. And the glorious thing is that now that you've seen, they're at day 2 of therapy, so I'm thinking about next week's. They're at day 2 of therapy. You can now look and see where they were after 2 years of therapy and into the 3rd year of therapy. And we're hoping to film with them again soon to see, because the progress continues to be amazing. It's a period of time for anybody who's been through it, and I've been through this, where you open your home and say, come on, bring that load of strangers in. Let's work with my child. Let's see if we can get some progress happening. It is humbling. It's terrifying. It's gratifying. It's frustrating. It's so very many things. And I think the first year is so hard for parents to settle into this idea that people are going to come in and that the whole way in which we have figured out a way to work and semi-keep together and semi-keep the peace, we have to go back to square one and do things a little bit differently, because a lot of the ways that we find to make it work is to give in to the things that keep the child at least calm. And that's understandable. There's nothing wrong with that. But our therapists will lead us down a path where we learn we don't have to do that anymore. That the way that we've been doing things isn't really working to the child's benefit and to them growing developmentally or educationally or socially, right? So a fascinating thing, but you saw that some of the things that they were working with him there, compliance, about getting him to come here, and these kinds of things, while a parent can do them, we can work on these things. It's easier if we are working on them in conjunction with people who are not parental people in the child's life. And there's a reason for that. It's not impossible, again, for those of you who are doing it on your own, and God bless you that you're doing it on your own, and it's important that you're doing it. And I don't want to dissuade you from doing it. It's just going to, studies have shown that it's just going to take you a little while longer because you've got baggage with your child. You know, if I am used to walking up to my mother and saying, you know, I'm a teenager and I'm used to walking up and saying, hey, can I borrow $5 from you? And every time I do it, she gives me $5. Then I'm going to do that all the time, right? Because I want $5. $5 in my pocket is a good thing if I'm a teenager. If I walk up to a total stranger or I walk up to my teacher and that's not a total stranger and I say, hey, can I have $5? The teacher's going to look at me and go, excuse me, no, you can't have $5, right? And I might go up to her again and say, can I have $5? And like her total incredulity at it and saying, no, I'm very quickly going to learn that I don't go to her and ask for $5. But that doesn't mean that I've learned that I don't go to anybody and ask them for $5. I'm going to keep going back to mom and asking for $5. And if mom says, no, I'm not going to give you $5, I'm going to be like, that's interesting. Okay, well, you know, it's worked a lot of the time before, and I'm going to keep going back to mom and saying, okay, so now it's Tuesday. Can I have $5 today? And where the teacher, who I don't have a previous experience with, maybe only have to tell me no once or twice or 3 times before I realize, oh, I'm not getting it from her. Because I've gotten it from mom on a regular basis, I'm going to keep asking mom. I might have to ask mom 40 times and have her refuse me 40 times in a row before I get it. Look, that shop is closed. I can't go to mom for $5 anymore, right? What if I ask mom 20 times and she says no 20 times, and on the 21st time she says yes, you can have the $5? Then guess what? I'm going to go right back to asking her all the time for the $5, right? Thinking I got to ask 20 times before I get it, so I'm just going to double down on that and ask her every 10 minutes. Now, this time it takes 40 times for mom to give it to me. And I go, that's okay, because I'm seeing it takes longer and I got to work harder at it, right? Same thing with behavior. If I ask mom for something and I don't get it and I tantrum and then I get it, then it works, right? Even if it works less often. And as parents, it's exhausting for us. Because if you stop and think about where we are mentally, if a child is tantruming every 5 minutes to get something that we used to give them, holy moly, right? We are going to give in sometimes. It's not good, and we need to try not to do that, but we do sometimes. So baggage, when you start out, and a preconceived notion of I'm going to do this and then you're going to do that, really sets us up for a longer haul. It just does. So ideal that if you can, to have other people working on your team. And that's what this family has. They've got the best of treatment from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. If you don't have access to that, there are other really good quality ABA providers. You can go to bacb.com and see if there are BCBAs in your area. You can use skills on your own, and you can use IBT, Institute for Behavioral Training, individuals to train a staff of volunteers to work with your child. Really ideal to have at least 3 people on a team. So if you've got mom and dad and one other person, you're in the ballpark, right? And if you can, to have it be somebody who doesn't already have baggage, it really helps jumpstart learning in a way that's very productive. But again, watch the A word. You'll get so much information about what it's like to have an individual grow and make progress, and what it's like emotionally for the family to be a part of this intervention, because they're a core part of this intervention. Okay. We are going to now go, before we do anything else, I have to stop because I can't believe I haven't said this yet. We have a viewer, a very special viewer, who is very near and dear to all of our hearts, Mike Hipple. And Mike, we understand that it is your birthday today. We want to wish you the very happiest of birthday. You inspire us. You help us to learn and grow. You are an incredible young man, and we're so thrilled that you grace us with your presence on a regular basis. You send us messages and let us know what you think about what's happening on the show. You ask questions. We think that you are absolutely remarkable, and I just want to say thank you, and I want to say happy, happy birthday to you. And all of us here wish you the happiest birthday. All right. Now, and what I started to go to is that we have another wonderful guest that we were able to film with on Friday, Dr. Julie Schweitzer, who comes to us from the UC Davis Mind Institute. And she joined us on Friday to talk about a very special study that she's working on right now. And if you listen to the interview, you'll see how there's a potential for you to participate in this study, and that there are other studies going on at the UC Davis Mind Institute that maybe you want to participate in. At the very least, you want to know what they're doing, because they do incredible work there that helps us all. So check this out, Dr. Julie Schweitzer from the UC Davis Mind Institute. Welcome back to Autism Live. I am so excited because, you know, on the show we talk a lot about UC Davis Mind Institute. And joining us directly from there is Dr. Julie Schweitzer. Excuse me, I'm going to get it right. She is going to be talking with us about a very exciting study that they're doing that I think is going to pique all of your interest. So first of all, Dr. Schweitzer, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the invitation.
Now, you are a professor of clinical psychiatry, but you are also the director of the UC Davis Schools of Health Mentoring Academy.
This is correct. This is a very different role that I play, but it's all about learning and teaching. And in that role, I help our junior faculty and our fellows and so forth establish their research careers, and our clinicians stay happy in academia. So we have new treatments and new discoveries. We need good people to stay in academia, and so that's how we're trying to support them. So it's the bigger picture, as well as my own research lab.
Wonderful. Well, we talk about things that come out of the UC Davis Mind Institute all the time, and we've had people ask us before, what is the Mind Institute? Because it sounds like a really cool thing. Is there a simple explanation?
Well, the actual name came from medical investigations and neurodevelopmental disorders, so that's what MIND stands for. But really, it's a collection of scientists who come together. We work as teams. We interact to come up with new ideas, and it's to find cures, treatments, prevention for neurodevelopmental disorders. That's our goal.
Well, we appreciate everything that you guys are doing on a daily basis. And right now, you are doing a study that's of particular interest to those of us who have children on the autism spectrum. Tell us about this study you're working on.
Sure. This is a federally funded study, and this is really looking at personalized medicine. I think people have heard that term most recently. And the idea is not all treatments are going to work for everybody. For some people, they might work really well, but for some people, not at all, or some people in the intermediate area. And our premise was, let's try to find out for children with autism if cognitive training works. And if it does, can we have some prediction of who it might work for? So there's two primary targets that we're looking at. One is a behavioral target, and that's this idea that many children with autism have problems with attention. And so we're looking at baseline rates of attention, and to see if attention can predict whether or not somebody responds well to cognitive training, and I'll explain what cognitive training is in a minute. And the other one is a genetic marker, and that's looking at whether or not children with autism who also have Fragile X, if that makes a difference, because people who have Fragile X and autism, they have different deficits and challenges in people without the Fragile X. It has to do with spatial learning and so forth. So we're looking at whether or not you can have some idea, again, about whether or not this training might be good for a particular profile or set of skills or challenges. And the cognitive training, the way that we're using it, we're using a set curriculum that was developed by the CogMed company, and it works on working memory, and it requires good attention, but it helps build good attention. So actually, to start out with your attentional skills, as I said, they may be more challenging than for some people than for others, but we're looking at that, and our idea is that if you build attention, will that make you perform better? And then not only on these working memory computer tasks, but does that affect your everyday life as well? Because the children, what they do is they work on this at home. So they work on it about 5 days a week. They have a series of exercises, and most of them are visual, spatial, where they have rockets they need to follow, or a span, or a Ferris wheel with different symbols, and they need to remember the order of where the different spots are on the tablet or computer screen. And when they get that right, when they reorder it and get it right, they get some sort of reward. Usually it's a sound, some some visual feedback as well. But as this goes on, their attention should build theoretically. We're looking at whether that then transfers to their everyday settings as well.
And the exercises that you're describing, they're doing this on the computer, correct?
Right. Well, actually, so this is maybe subtle, but we started out where it was all computer-based, and now we've primarily switched to tablets because when we started the research, the tablets weren't as available, and the company who makes the program, they didn't have a tablet base. And what we're finding, of course, is that children with autism, for a number of them, it's easier for them to use a tablet than it is a computer, where they may not be as familiar with operating a mouse. And of course, lots of young people nowadays are not used to using a mouse on a computer. They go straight to a tablet.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. I went to use something that somebody else had the other day, and it didn't have a mouse, and I was lost. I've been left in the dust. I'm a dinosaur. But an incredible study. You're still looking for participants. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So if people are within about an hour or so of the Sacramento area, we will drive to their home. So we do the assessments in the person's home, the initial assessment, the pre-test, and then they do the whole training in their home. And then we come back out after the training is finished. The training takes about 5 to 6 weeks. And then we do a post-test, and then we do a follow-up visit about 3 months after that.
And is there a certain age range that you're looking for to be participants?
Yes, between 8 and 17 years.
Okay. And you said it takes about 5 weeks. Where would people go to if they're interested in being a part of this study?
Great question. So if you just even type into Google UC Davis Mind Institute, you can find our lab. Again, my name is Dr. Julie Schweitzer. If you look under me, you can find it. Also, my research assistants, their phone number is 916-703-0294. So if you call that number, they're available and they're ready, and they will get back with you. We'll do a phone screen, and then we try to arrange a visit.
Well, and I think it's important to note that by participating in the study, it's possible that your child's memory skills will improve, and that in doing that, not only will things get better in your household, but you'll be helping the entire autism community by being a part of the study, because if this works, then that information will eventually be disseminated to the rest of us.
Thank you so much for saying that. That's exactly the idea behind why we do all this research, is really to see whether or not, even on a small scale, these participants make a difference for the whole community. So I appreciate that plug there.
Well, we love what you guys do. Anytime that you guys have studies come out, it's something that we cover here on the show. And is there a place on your website that it is very specific for all the studies that you're doing for participants to find a way to connect with you?
There is. So most of my research currently is in ADHD. And if you look under the ADHD website at the Mind Institute, you'll find it. I'm making sure my research assistants add the impact study. Sometimes it's up there, sometimes it isn't. But that lists some of our other studies. But in general, at the Mind Institute, as you said, we do a lot of research in autism, and a lot of our studies are listed there. And in general, we're interested in this overlap between autism and ADHD because it's becoming more and more obvious that there is an overlap there for many persons with autism. So
we're glad you're interested in it, Dr. Schweitzer, because all of us parents are interested in it as well.
Thank you. Fantastic.
Because we see that there are connections there as well. So we love it when you brighter minds are interested in it as well. We thank you for that.
That's great. Thank you. Well, it helps us. We think they could be more responsive to treatments for autism if their attention is better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of the things we have parents writing into us on a daily basis about attention and focus, and how do we get our kids to strengthen that. So we're loving that you're working on that.
Well, thank you. And we'll persevere.
All right. Well, we hope that you'll come back and share with us when you have more information. We'll look forward to hearing about what the outcome of this study and the rest of the things that you're working on are.
Great. And thank you again so much for letting me have this time and connect with the audience.
It's available anytime you're available.
Thank you. Fantastic.
Thank you, Dr. Schweitzer.
Okay. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. you're not going to find a more reputable institution in terms of doing research. So I hope that if you are somebody who is within that hour of the Sacramento area, that you will check out that website and be a part of this study. It will, I'm sure that it will be enriching for your child and certainly enriching for the entire autism community. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back after these messages.
Well, today is the One Hope Act Today for Military Families 10K and 5K Run, Walk, and Family Fun Festival.
Thanks for coming out to support this awesome cause.
What I'm trying to accomplish here is to get more people involved, more people to be aware of autism as a disorder so that they can be more involved in this effort to help people find resources.
Pull that belly button in, get a nice balance there.
This is an incredible event. I'm very passionate about it. Autism is affecting so many kids across the United States, and I also support our military.
2, 3, 4. My name's Gunnery Sergeant Sean Tajma. I work with the School of Infantry West. I'm currently running with 1st Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion. I personally involved with this because my son Jacob has autism. I just want to say thanks to Act Today for what they're doing to help my family and other military families with autism.
Here we go, let's hear it for the 2nd Light Infantry.
Some of the main sponsors here, of course, One Hope Wine is the title sponsor.
What we do is we donate 50% of our profits back to different partner charities, one of them being Act Today that does a fantastic job.
Act Today is very dear to my heart because when my husband was deployed, they were there when we didn't know how we were going to make things happen. They give so much to the military family, and it comes at a time when you just don't know how you're going to make ends meet. So to me, it's more than just an event, and it's more than just a grant. It's a gift.
All right, you guys, have we gone over the rules?
Thank you all to the teams, to the individuals that donated to this fantastic cause out here again this year. The event got larger.
People ask me why military families with autism, why does Act Today have that as a special program? I'll tell you why. Because our military families should not have to fight 2 battles. One, to protect our country, and another, to get services for their children. They move so often. Every time they move, they have to start again. We owe it to them. And it just was a tremendous success. So I just want to say thanks to everybody for taking part in it.
Check this out, Marine. See all these wonderful people? All you gotta do next year, Marine, Devil Dog, 2 for 100, sign up with me, staff or an email, and I'm gonna take you out here, do a little 5K, little PT early in the morning. After that, you're gonna have the time of your life. After that, I might even be able to get you a letter of appreciation, maybe a little libo time. How's that sound?
Sign up for next year because this is an event that comes on and on. It's a win-win situation here.
Welcome back to Autism Live. So we thank Dr. Julie Schweitzer for being with us and encourage you, if you are, especially if you're in the Sacramento area, the way that we started this whole interview process with her is that both Nancy Alspaugh Jackson and I had gotten an email for some reason, because we have kids in the right age range to be a part of the study, but we don't live in Sacramento. And both of us called and said, we want to participate in this study. And we couldn't because it's outside. For this particular study, they need people in the Sacramento area. But there are other studies that they do that don't necessarily. But this particular one, in order for the assessors to get there and do the pre-assessment and then the post-assessment, they need to be in the area and get them set up with the what the exercises. So, but I boy, I would have loved to have participated in that. Really incredible opportunity when you get to be a part of, we did participate in some other studies with Jem, and it's always gratifying. Your child learns something. Sometimes you learn something, and to be a part of research that helps other people, either by saying this doesn't work, and so it eliminated them taking the time to do it, woohoo, right? Or that it shows that it does work and says to people, you should spend some more time doing this. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. I want to take now a couple of questions that came in that I can address. You know, sometimes you guys send in questions and I store them like a squirrel storing nuts, because I know that Dr. Granpeche will be here tomorrow, and I love to get her take on things when you guys ask. But somebody asked, can this skills program be used for autism adults? And the question is, it depends on the autism adult. I love to give a carte blanche. I keep having earpiece problems, sorry. I love to give a carte blanche, yes, because I would say to you, and I have spent a great deal of time reading and using the skills program, that there is something for everyone in there. I do want to give you the asterisk, though, that skills was invented and includes material that is appropriate to teach people up through ages 8 if the skill starts to emerge before the age of 8. So for instance, appropriately emerge before their 9th birthday. So there aren't any things in there about balancing a checkbook, right? Because I don't know any 8-year-olds that balance their own checkbook. So those kinds of skills are not in there, although that curriculum is being written to be added in at some point down the line. And there are other things that we can point to. There are training videos that we know about that help to teach those kinds of things that aren't a part of skills, right? But if you stop and consider all of the skills that begin to emerge before a person turns age 9. And again, this is about emerging skills, not mastered skills. When I was reading through the social language curriculum of skills, it was like my head was going to explode, because there were all these things that I would notice and I'd go, I'm not good at that. And then I would read through the lesson and go, oh, no wonder why I'm not good at that, because I'm not doing steps 5 and 7. And I learned from it. Now, I am an incredibly verbal person in my early 50s, and the fact that there was stuff in there that, maybe that skill emerged, like ending a conversation. I still am working on this, and I've improved greatly over the last 4 years, but it is not my strong suit, and I have shown progress, and there are things that I know that when I need to end a conversation, I can, and I use techniques that I learned in skills. If you think about that skill does start to emerge in a neurotypical 8-year-old, but it is nowhere near completed. They just start to be aware of the fact that they can say goodbye and walk away, right? So typically for adults who are on the autism spectrum, there are 3 curricular areas that we really point to and say, if they're a very high functioning adult, you're still going to find things that you can work on, and that is the social skills curriculum, in particular the social language aspect of the social skills curriculum, the cognition curriculum, which deals with a wide variety of how we think, why we think, perspective taking, those kinds of things, and then the executive functioning curriculum, which is so useful for everyone. I really honestly, if you've ever been to a conference that was for business people or a self-help conference, basically that's what they're doing there, is executive functions. In a nutshell, that's what they're doing, and sometimes they can be effective and sometimes not, but it's so well written in the skills curriculum. I really honestly believe that any adult could go through the executive functions in the skills curriculum and have their life improve measurably, because it helps you to focus on the things that you want to achieve and then achieving those goals and noticing all the little things along the way that can prevent you from achieving that goal, and being able to still circumvent that. And then being able to celebrate the fact that you made it to your goal and then setting new goals. It's really very, very impressive. I have said before that if we could give that executive functions curriculum to every single junior high and high school student in the world, oh my goodness. the problems that we see with so many adults and that we as adults struggle with would change exponentially. So I encourage you to look at it in terms of that way. Now, if the adult is not as high functioning, and there might be lots of other things within that curriculum, within the domains, that would be helpful as well too. There's going to be a great deal of stuff for an adult that you're going to say, this does not pertain, right? But I think that there's still a lot there to be worked on by an adult on the autism spectrum. Okay, and then the next question that we had, I'm going to go ahead and put that one up there since we answered that. The next question that we had, do you know of any parents that have started the treatment of methyl B12? Well, I'm a parent that did that intervention, so I can speak effectively to that. I will tell you that we waited a really long time to do the methyl B12 because I was so nervous about it. For those of you who aren't aware of methyl B12, it is a substance which it's available in 3 different ways right now. Studies that I have read suggest that the most efficient way of delivering methyl B12 into a person's body if they're in need of methyl B12 is through injections. So I gave my son injections of methyl B12. And the idea of that frightened me, right? There are 2 other ways that it's available. One is through a nose spray, and I am not, up completely on the research, but at the time that we gave the shots, I was not seeing that it was as effective. That may have changed by now, I'm not sure. And then there are lollipops that have methyl B12 in them so that it ends up being delivered via the tongue. And we've tried the lollipops and they're tasty, and we just didn't see the result from them with my individual child, but I don't know that we didn't do it long enough. But we consulted with our doctor who said, I see in your child that there is the need for these methyl B12 shots, and you do have to get them prescribed. It isn't something you can prescribe yourself. You do have to go to a doctor and talk about a wide variety of things. And then there are things that you should know about putting your child on methyl B12. That it's not inexpensive. It's not the most expensive intervention that there is, but usually a month's supply, and I want to say that we were giving them to my son every 3rd night, not even every other night. And so that was around $120 a month, which is, that was a bit of a thing for us to be able to budget for. For some people, that's like, oh, is that all? But for a lot of us, that's a consideration. So, and our insurance did not cover that. And I know some insurance companies do and others don't. But in any case, we waited a really long time, and I went to a workshop to learn how to give the shot because you have to give it in a very specific way. Some people numb their child's, because you give it in the bum, and some people numb their child's bum before giving it. Some people go in and do it in the middle of the night. I just am not that kind of a parent. I got to be honest with you. I just can't do that because I don't want to blow trust with my kid. And with my kid, my individual kid, that would blow trust. If I went in the night and snuck in and jabbed him with a needle, he would never trust me again. Not all kids are that way. Some kids sleep through it. It just depends on your individual kid. And because I'm allergic to lidocaine, we decided that we were not going to numb. But other parents wouldn't even consider that. I just don't want my kid to end up being allergic to lidocaine, and that's a very personal medical thing in our family. So we didn't numb, and we did it with him fully awake. I wanted him to know that that's what we were doing. I think he was 6 or 7 when we first did the shots, and I know people who do it much younger. They do it by weight, so the amount of the shot is directly by how much they weigh, and you really have to keep up with your doctor and let your doctor know when the child's weight changes. With some kids, there are potential side effects that in the initial phase makes people not want to do them, that for some kids it stimulates their teeth and gum area and sends blood flow to there and kind of wakens it up for kids who've been a little bit numb and maybe have been a little bit slow to speech in using that. It can make it tingle, which is great because we're having the blood flow there, but sometimes one of the byproducts of that is that they become bitey, that they'll bite on their hand or they'll bite on their shirt or they'll chew pencils or they'll chew paper. We did experience that with my son. I've shared before on the show that we got him jewelry. There was a lovely necklace that he had that he would sit in class and he could stick it looked like a yin and yang symbol, and it was totally safe made specifically for this purpose, but nobody else would have known that. And he would bite on it and chew on it. It only lasted for a couple of months, and then we were able to retire the jewelry, so it didn't last forever. But we did have to give him something at school so that he wouldn't bite himself or bite a pencil. And he was at an age and where his behavior, where we didn't worry about him biting another person. But for little kids, you got to take that into consideration, that it could cause them to bite another kid because they literally want something to bite because it feels funny. So there's that consideration. For some of our kids, it sometimes kicks up their yeast a little bit, that you'll struggle a little bit getting the yeast regulated if your kid is one of those kids. My kid was, and we saw that a little bit and had to regulate and take, my child can't do sugar in his diet because he gets drunk on it, but even we had put some fruit back into his diet and we had to dial back on that so that he wasn't getting as much fruit, so to make sure that he got supplements to make sure that he's getting enough vitamin C. But we saw within a week of the first set of shots, this is why we did the methyl B12 shots. I had heard a story from my doctor that there was a boy who was not speaking at all and who started the shots, and within a very short period of time, like 2 months, was incredibly verbal. So that's what got us started saying, ooh, we'd like to do the shots, but we waited a number of years. But when we did start the shots, my son was able to speak, but he would sometimes put there's a way in which you speak, which is different from how you say something in Spanish, but normally, you say the verb and then you say the noun in a sentence in a certain way, and it was always reversed with Jem, so that it made it hard to listen, and other people weren't understanding him. He wasn't articulating real well, and the sentence was never in context. So the example of what happened, we gave him the first week of shots, and we used to go to Disneyland on a really regular basis, and there's a place in California Adventure that's called the Blue Sky Room, and it's where you go to see the things that they're working on. So if they're about to build a new ride, they're developing something, you can see how they did it. You can see the little diorama that shows what's happening at Disneyland. Well, we had gone in the year before, and they were showing how they built Cars Land, and there's a place where you can sit down and watch a video where they went to Route 66 and they did all this research, and then there's the diorama that you could see what's already built and what's being built and so on and so forth. Okay, so there was one morning that my husband and I were trying to sleep late a little bit. My son had gone, and he would go through different movies, Disney movies, and just be interested in only watching that movie for a week, So he was in a Valiant mode. Valiant is a story about a bunch of homing pigeons in World War II in London. And he was really into this movie that particular week. So he had gone we were still having a lie-in. He had gone into the other room and stuck the VHS into the player and had queued it up and was watching Valiant. And he came in to the bedroom and said to me, "Mom, you know how they have that place at Disneyland called the Blue Sky Room, and how we went there and they were showing the video about cars and how they did the research about going to Route 66? I think they should build a land that's World War II in England, and they should go to London to research how to do it. And there could be rides there that are about Valiant where you get to ride with the carrier pigeon." This is what he came in and said, and I sat straight up in bed, and I woke up my husband, and I said, "Wake up!" Because the week before, what my son would have come in and said was, Mom, there's a video and London, and that's what they should do, and the carrier pigeon. And I would have had no idea what the context was. I wouldn't have known that he was talking about the Route 66. I wouldn't have known that he was talking about the Blue Sky Room. I wouldn't have known. I probably, after a while and asking him questions, would have put together that he was talking about Valiant, but it would have taken me a solid hour. And instead, he just lined it all out and said, this is what I'm thinking about. And it was brilliant. If you think about it, it's brilliant that he was like, they should make a ride. And for Valiant, that he was sitting there watching the movie and said, why don't they have a Disneyland ride for Valiant? They should make a ride for Valiant. And you know, that's what they did with Route 66 and connected it with, I remember being in the Blue Sky Room and they went to Route 66. Well, they should do that with Valiant and they should go to London. And he was able to like give me all of those points in the conversation and I was able to follow it. And I went, those shots are great, right? And so we did the shots for probably 2 years. And I will tell you that the reason why we stopped doing them was because he asked for us to stop doing them. He said, my bum hurts. I really, I don't want to do the shots for a while. And he recently, and I have to honor this, I need to get them started again because he said to me, Mom, I'm having trouble saying what I want to say. And when I have the shots, I don't feel that. I'd like the shots again. And I haven't gotten them for him, so I need to do that. And thank you for reminding me. But that's the process of a methyl B12 shot. I do think that if your child is one that your doctor has said there is a methylation issue, I want to encourage you to discuss that with your doctor. When parents are polled to ask of all the biomedical things that you've tried and all the things that you've considered, what are the first ones on your list, and if you've done them, what is giving you the biggest bang for your buck? And do you know what the two things that parents always will say gave the biggest bang for their buck? Parents will say that trying the gluten-free, casein-free diet and the methyl B12 shots. It is not, by the way, just methyl B12 shots. You have to ask for the methyl B12 shots. That is a different thing. I know that I can go to my local doctor and he will give my son a B12 shot. Not the same thing. You want the methyl B12 shot. They're red. The substance is red. And if you're not getting that, then you're not in the right neighborhood. All right, we are going to take a break and we're going to be back with more of Autism Live after these messages. Stick with us.
Hi, it's Lisa Ackerman, Talk of Facts, autism journey questions and answers that help you get down the path in your autism journey faster, easier, like the Superman that you need to be or Supergirl. But on a serious note, one of the most common questions that I get is, what do I do when my child is a non-responder to therapeutics and medical intervention? If you have a child that's a non-responder, know this, and if you've been on the journey for a long time, there's been more research in treatments for autism since 2005 than all previous years combined. So my first recommendation for a kid, for a family that has a kid with a non-responding issue to treatments, therapies, and medical intervention, is to reevaluate the treatments that are available. Start with the basics. Go back and revisit a MAPS doctor. Get all of that baseline testing, or a good neuropsych if you need to look at the therapeutics. Start with the baseline. The second thing families need to know when they are dealing with a child that has non-responder issues is really, you're going to have to scale up. And I mean scale up the time you're spending with your resources to figure out and really become the Sherlock Holmes to understanding what is going on, what is impeding progress, why aren't things moving forward. You really need to make sure that you have a current MRI and a current EEG. Those two tests are so extremely valuable. Often they will provide clues as to what is going on and what treatments that really could help your child make the best progress they can make. Hey, there's another frequently asked question. Wish I had my magic fairy wand so everybody was a responder. It's in the shop. Maybe I'll get it next time when we get together and talk about Talk of Facts. We'll see you soon.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Wanted to take a quick second to talk about a couple of different things as we gear up. You know, the year starts to fly at this moment in time. Yesterday, there were a lot of people who were posting places saying that it's just 1 month. We're just 1 month away from World Autism Awareness Day. A couple of things that I want to mention to everybody. It's a very exciting time of year, and I know that there's a part of all of us that goes, okay, World Autism Awareness Day. It's kind of World Autism Awareness Day every day in my household, right? That kind of goes without saying. But let's not look the gift horse in the mouth, right? There is a day every year when the entire world pays us a little bit more attention. We can all find something negative in that. I surely can if I look deep enough, right? But why? Why do we want to spend the time to looking for the negative thing in it? And I think that we can all celebrate this day in whichever way we choose to, but if there is a person on this planet that is part of the autism community that doesn't think more awareness about autism is needed, then I don't know what to say. You know what I mean? There needs to be more awareness, and we may not disagree on what that awareness needs to be. But let's agree that it's a good day to spread the awareness of what we think of that day, right? So a couple of different things happen on World Autism Awareness Day. And of course, the entire month of April is for autism awareness. So on the day of World Awareness, the UN usually makes a statement and publishes it to everyone in the world to read, and they usually stand at the podium and make some sort of a statement about how important it is for more people to be aware of, and that early intervention is super duper important. We appreciate that because that's a message that cannot be said enough. I know that sometimes it's like, duh, but you have to remember that what it was like the day before you joined the autism community. I was clueless, right? But there were certain things that I knew and certain things that I saw and certain things that I was aware of. And one of the things that I heard of before I was a member of the autism community that wasn't Rain Man and wasn't a really antiquated idea of autism, I heard about Autism Speaks. Now, Autism Speaks right now is celebrating its 10th anniversary. And my son was diagnosed with autism 9 years ago. And yet, in that first year of Autism Speaks, I heard about them, and it was one of the things in the back of my head when I watched my child descend into autism was that I had heard Autism Speaks say that early intervention is key and important. And it doesn't matter to me which mouthpiece you hear it from. Everybody needs to hear that. And you know what I mean when I say everybody. Everybody. That for those of you who've been on this ride for a while, you know, and I've said it before, I can be standing in line at the bank, and before I'm done, somehow it comes up in conversation. And when it comes up in conversation, I start looking around for who's the person that needed this information the most right now. And it's not me, right? It's not that I just need to talk about autism one more time. It's because somebody in the room needed the information and needed to know that it was okay to ask. So whether you choose to, and I know that there are people that Autism Speaks is not their flavor, and I totally understand and respect that. And if you don't want to participate in their event, which is Light It Up Blue, I encourage you to find some other way for you to commemorate the day and to spread awareness. I personally enjoy celebrating Light It Up Blue. I love being able to stick blue lights on my home and turn them on. And I usually leave them on for the whole month of April, but I make very sure that they are up for April 2nd and let them blaze, and I leave them on all night long. And if you think for a second that it's like, oh, what difference does it make? I will tell you that the home that we rent, we put up our lights the first year and we let them run and stay on, for several, like the whole first week of April. And one of our lovely neighbors reported us to the HOA, who wrote a ticket to my landlord and said, these people have their Christmas lights up. and it is April, and that is inappropriate, and that they were offended that they live in a community where people take care of their houses, and we still had our Christmas lights up. And my landlady called me and said, I'm really sorry about this, but apparently you have your Christmas lights up and you need to take them down. And I said, I beg your pardon. I do not have my Christmas lights up. I have my autism awareness lighted up blue lights up, and I will not be taking them down. And I will be happy to get a civil liberty lawyer on it if it's a problem for you. And she was like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I didn't know about lighted up blue. And I know in our world, we move around and we're like, people don't know about lighted up blue. And so she went back to the HOA and said, this is not about Christmas. This is about autism. And then they went back to the neighbor who reported it and said, it's not about Christmas, it's about autism. And I didn't think anything more of it. But then this last summer was at our HOA pool, and something came up in conversation, as it always does. And I got a little bit of a glimmer of that. I think I know at least one of the people involved, and they said, it was so amazing because then we looked it up, and that led to somebody getting the information that they knew, that they said, did you know that there was this lighted up blue thing? And then somebody in their office said, what is this organization? I need to know more about this because I have a niece that's having a problem with her son. You know what I mean? It's so interesting how the little threads go, and you never know who it's going to teach and who it's going to reach. But we all have a mouthpiece, whether we know it or not, and I encourage you to find things to celebrate. There are so many events to go to in April. There are so many places to be. Find the place that feels right for you. Find your tribe, as Eustacia Cutler, Dr. Temple Grandin's mom, says. Find your tribe, the one that works for you, and participate. Do not be alone. Don't isolate. Not through April. If you need to isolate in May, I will let you do that for a little while in May, and then we'll get you back in June. But I hope that you'll participate in some of these events. All right, we've got 1 minute left here. So again, I want to say a very happy birthday to Mike Hipple. I want to say a big thank you to Dr. Temple Grandin for finding the time to talk to us on Friday, and a special thank you to Juan Ronderos Torres for translating for us, and to Kelby Wood for being able to put the whole thing together on a 3-second notice. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and supporting us. Don't forget that tomorrow is Wednesday. Dr. Doreen Granpeche is going to be with us for Ask Dr. Doreen. You can be sending your questions in now. I've already got some, and I'd love some more. Then in the second hour, Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Allspot Jackson will be here with us. We have an actor who's going to be joining us tomorrow that's trying to make a difference in the realm of therapy dogs. So we're going to be talking about pets and what a benefit they are to our kids. You're going to want to stay with us for that. So see you tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.